disclosures or recusals from any member of the committee on any topics? No, great. Okay, then we'll start right off with number 1, adopting the final report and recommendations from the task force on equity in music and entertainment. And we have one person who'd like to speak to that. Karen, please. There you are. Hi, thanks. Find a spot, maybe you guys.
Thank you, gentlemen. All right. Well, thank you so much for having me tonight. I'm Karen Reese. I'm the president of Urban Community Arts Network, and I was the chair of the task force for equity in music and entertainment. So thanks for supporting the committee, or the task force, by sending Syed here to represent Public Safety Review. So while we focus on all music, the primary focus is hip-hop music in Madison, and it's relevant to this committee because there's long been a negative stigma associated with hip-hop music in Madison. The stigma that it's violent, that it's dangerous. And oftentimes when we gather people to discuss the art of hip-hop, we have a hard time getting past the public safety conversation to even discuss art and culture. This myth was debunked by a study done by the UW and my organization in 2017 that looked at 8 years of police calls for service and compared those to establishments with both an alcohol and entertainment license, and found that there's essentially no difference in police calls for service for any genre of music. The public safety portion of this report, hopefully some of you have had a chance to look at it. The list of recommendations are in the front and they're explained throughout the report. Probably the biggest focus area would be the police-related recommendations, which are echoed from other task forces and committees that are being held currently in the city. We're supporting that. But also just taking a look at some of the other things that really deal with arts, culture, and inclusion related to music and equity in the city, I think are relevant to this committee, being that there's the public safety stigma associated with this that is not something that we really necessarily need to be focusing on in the interest of equity, as that's been debunked. So I would ask that you keep that in mind when you review the recommendations, and I also really appreciate any comments or suggestions that you all have on the report, ways that we can help make it more relevant to the work that you all do here. Unfortunately, we did not have an NPD representative on the task force. We were hoping to have a non-voting member, but for whatever reason, despite requests, that did not happen. We have worked with NPD as an organization and as a community over the past decade, trying to resolve issues related to inequities, specifically for hip-hop events and music in the city that have experienced over-policing and various issues. So we're hoping to continue to work with the police department to resolve these issues. And again, thanks for listening, and I welcome your questions.
Even though you did not have a member of MPD as a member or a non-voting member, did you have regular attendance by MPD, any attendance by MPD?
No attendance. So we could not have a voting member on the task force because they're employees of the city. That's what we were told. I did request someone to attend regularly, and for whatever reason, that request was not fulfilled.
In going through the report, I noted down on the recommendations the ones that would have a price tag attached to them. And I would say there are at least half of the recommendations that would. Did you do any kind of fiscal impact or financial assessment for implementing any of these?
We did not have time to do that in the year. Time goes fast, but we're hoping to be able to do that as we work. We're hoping to have the opportunity to work on implementation plans as we go forward. There is a specific price listed for recommendation number 1 that requests a specific city position be created to address some of these issues, but besides that, we have not looked into specific fiscal impact.
And one other
Mhm.
question, if I may. I'm wondering on recommendation, I think it's 8C and 9. It talks about within 1 year, venues should begin to follow the 2015 revised entertainment practices for venue owners. Is there any authority to have this be a requirement, or is this like a suggestion?
So this is something that we're pursuing through the Alcohol License Review Committee. They would have the authority. We requested that this be specifically attached to license renewal. And we're hoping that the list of best practices be distributed and included as part of the tavern safety training. Venue owners are not required to attend tavern safety training, but it's highly recommended, and it can protect them if anything happens at their venue. So we're told that most people do attend tavern safety training.
Thank you, and thank you for being here to talk about this and to answer questions.
So we have recommendation 28, which talks about the movie theater. How you see it being screened?
So it could be screened in a number of ways. It could be people looking at it personally. It could be, item listed on an agenda for committees. We could have representatives of committee members set up the screening at local community centers or other venues the city could sponsor, such as screening for this sort of thing.
Because that's something MPD should definitely have a look at. It's a very good document.
Yeah, it definitely helps to have our history and how we got here. And in that sense, a recommendation for a suggestion related to incorporating that would be helpful.
Who specifically did you contact to request participation from the Madison Police Department? You said that didn't work out. Who specifically?
Captain Friedman from the Downtown District and Deputy Mayor Gloria Reyes.
Okay, Gloria's not here again, so we can't ask her. Related to question or recommendation number 1, you're suggesting that the city create a full-time staff position in the mayor's office. Did that recommendation come from the city staff? Did they endorse that? What was their position on this and who made that recommendation?
The recommendation came from the task force members looking at, we did full root cause analysis at the beginning of our time as a task force, and looking at all of the very complicated procedures that are associated with getting business licenses or even reserving a car for the county for a sound permit. There are a lot of very complicated things that prevent access for a lot of community members to city process, and therefore options for sponsoring things like performances even at a block party. So that's really the rationale for proposing in part that position, and this was supported. We had Martha White is here, who was the staff supporting the task force.
From the mayor's office?
From Department of Civil Rights.
Not from the mayor's office?
No, I do not work in the mayor's office. I work in the Department of Civil Rights.
Thank you. Item number 27, MPD should reduce police presence in communities of color, and when police are present in these communities, the focus should be on building trust and connection. I don't hear anything or notice anything about music, hip-hop, and I'm wondering how that was determined and what the reason was.
Sure, so we see, there's no denying that the stigma associated with hip-hop in Madison is very tightly associated with race. Oftentimes, we'll see the term hip-hop used as a substitute for mentioning a race issue, sort of as coded language. And part of this over-policing does come with hip-hop events specifically that are attracting large crowds of people of color, specifically Black citizens of Madison. And so that's where the relationship comes there.
Okay, so the DCR representative is the staff liaison for this, is that correct? Or is there a staff liaison? for
So
this committee?
I do what Emily does. for the task force on equity in music and entertainment. So I do what Emily Hardenman does for this committee.
I have a question for PD staff. Just as a segue, has Madison Police Department been asked to review any of these recommendations?
I spoke with Captain Friedman today, because I was asked by Alder Zellers to find out who may have participated in this. He thought on the very early stages of this topic that it was retired Captain Blady that had participated and been involved. Friedman was familiar with this. He didn't specifically say he had reviewed everything on it, but he did say he hadn't been involved in it. And that's all I have, Alder. I didn't really specifically ask him if he'd been asked or anything along those lines.
I have no further questions at this point.
I think also to Gloria Reyes is at a common council meeting tonight, so she probably would have been here.
No, there's no common council meeting tonight. That was yesterday.
That was yesterday?
I'm on the common council.
Oh, you are? That was
I guess my question is, were there any other types of music and entertainment considered besides hip hop?
Yeah, we did discuss other underrepresented forms of music like R&B, Latin, jazz, that sort of thing. We don't see other kinds of music that represents the Southeast Asian communities, Native American communities. There's a pretty wide range of music that we don't see, but the impetus for creating this task force was directly related to issues that were happening in the hip hop community. And so this whole process began about 10 years ago, where we began meetings with MPD administration and the mayor's office to address some of these equity issues. And over the years, that's where the formation of the task force started. So that's why hip hop was the focus.
And I have a question about the UW study. I'm wondering, I realize that it says the calls for service. Was that based strictly on the address of the venue?
Yes.
Or as opposed to the surrounding area?
So we requested calls for the specific licensed venues in Madison, and then that gave us about 10,000 calls. So it was from an 8-year period, 2008 to 2016. We chose that period specifically because we see ups and downs in the number of shows that happen in Madison, so we chose one that would span all of that kind of effect. And then we went through, we eliminated calls that were things like 911 hang-up calls, or if it was a speeding ticket that was associated with the address, so things that wouldn't be substantially related to the address. We also only evaluated calls that were between 7 p.m. and 4 a.m., so spanning 2 days there, but things that would be directly related to a nighttime event.
Well, my question stems from the fact that, for instance, the 100 block of King Street, which had a series of issues, would have been calls for service, but not necessarily pinned to the venue that was in the block that may have had the hip hop show.
Sure.
So did that?
Yeah, so that actually, that incident, or those incidents were just before 2008. However, this report does include venues like Our Place on Park. And another very high police call area was Whiskey Jack's on State Street, and Segredo's or Club Liquid on University Avenue. And University Avenue would be a good example of somewhere where there might be police calls for service in the area. So yeah, we just reported it according to the address. And it was published in a peer-reviewed journal as well.
Anyone else?
I don't have a question, I was ready to make a motion.
Please.
I would like to move that we accept the report adopt the report, to accept the report, and if I get a second, then we'll
I'll second that.
just run that. I asked for the last meeting that information be sent out on the difference between accept and adopt, which I believe was done. But I'll just review that. It says, if the council adopts the solitary report, which this is, such actions mean that the council agrees with the report and that any policy recommendations therein are adopted as policy of the city, which the city and its agencies will be expected to follow. So that's adopt. Accept means, such action means that the council agrees with the report, but it doesn't go on to say, and any policy recommendations, et cetera. And so I am not willing to do the adopt route because there are too many, in my mind, unknowns in terms of costs and implementation and things like that. So accepting the report is fine, but adopting, I could not go along with that. Also, as points of information, since our last meeting, the ALRC has acted upon this, and they also went the route of accepting as opposed to adopting. And then just last evening, the Transportation Policy and Planning Board also recommended accepting rather than adopting. So that's kind of the logic behind that motion.
Thank you, and thank you, Alder Zellers. That's the direction I was going in reviewing this report. You know, the issue of accepting versus adopting has been discussed, and this report was prepared, and we should accept it that it was prepared. However, there are numerous recommendations here that will have a significant cost. There are a number of recommendations that I vehemently disagree with, and there's too many to discuss at this meeting. And, you know, and I philosophically am opposed to them. I'm not going to speak to them without having other staff here from the police department, Captain Friedman, that could speak to this. So the report was prepared, it was completed, and I would agree with the ALRC, of which I'm on, that we accept the report, but I cannot recommend adoption of the recommendations. So, agreed.
Okay. Any other further discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Report, thank you very much. Thank you.